4-year war in Ukraine, continuing genocidal war in Gaza, and now Iran. War is at the forefront of many of our minds at the moment. So too the fact that as Europeans, we are investing in arms industries and war economies in a direct response to Putin's aggressive invasion of Ukraine 4 years ago. Factories producing both old and new generations of weapons are opening across many EU states as we speak. It seems a renewed epoch of war is being enacted. The costs to human beings caught up in these disasters are catastrophic. The cost to the natural environment, incalculable. Warframes is a clickbait citizen project. It takes a deep dive into the relationship between war, preparations for war, the economy of war, and our seeming acquiescence to the logic of war. Art making has sometimes expressed anti-war sentiments, from shock at the violence and destruction to outright rejection and pacifism. But there is also an enormous body of art and cultural products designed to reinforce the logic behind war, to justify and validate acts of annihilation, dehumanization, and the destruction of empathy towards the other. Late last year, Clickbait Citizen produced a series of 5 audio podcasts called Warframes. And what follows is the first in a series of video podcasts exploring the same themes further. Today, it's my enormous pleasure to talk with the artist Robertina Šebjanič, who is based in Ljubljana, Slovenia. By way of introduction, a few years ago she wrote the following words: "Beneath the waves, history decays. The past is dissolving into the sea, but its consequences are anything but washed away. Oceanic feeling, a post-geopolitical love, an invitation to life." Her practice drifts through the fluid thresholds of hydroecology, geopolitics, and arts, attuned to the rhythms and ruptures of the aquatic worlds. In her analysis of the Anthropocene and its theoretical framework, she uses the terms aquatocene and aquaforming to refer to the human impact on aquatic environment. Robertina, your project, Echoes of the Abyss, it took shape after research conducted aboard the research vessel Tara Ocean Foundation in the Baltic Sea. Tell us about that voyage. What did you discover? And who did you meet? What did you record?
So, Chris, first of all, thank you for having me in your podcast also. And yeah, on the Baltic Sea in 2023, in June 2023, I was just like artist in resident there at the Tara. It's a research vessel. And being there and reading about Baltic Sea and getting to know its environments, I came across informations about huge amounts of ammunition which was like dumped into that areas, especially after the Second World War, but also during the other geopolitical struggles. And when reading and getting information about what was happening in that regions, we have been also stopping because we had like several stopovers when we have been sailing in the Baltic. My leg on the Tara was actually from our house to Riga. And when sailing and reading and just like getting to know all this information, so I came across a study conducted by a really diligent group of scientists, which they are working in different countries also of the Baltic Sea. And one of the coordinators of this project, Dr. Jacek Beldowski, he's stationed in Sopot. He was very generous with me and he was happy to meet me. Like I wrote him, I'm on Tara. We are like just stopping in Sopot for a few days, and he took time and to speak about problematics. And this kind of pulled me into the getting deeper into this kind of research, you know. So the research time on Tara vessel was informative for me, I would say. It gave me the first glances into the problematics, which then later on I went into deeper research in. And when being there at Baltic, like what I did, it was also like we went with a little boat out of the Tara to just record a bit of the sound in the areas where anchoring was forbidden because of the chemical munitions being on the floor, and this is like possible to see also on the sea maps. So yeah, this was kind of the start, I would say.
Let's talk a little bit more about the politics of this and the fact and the geopolitical implications of having dumped so much of the munitions on the seabed over generations now. Let's talk about that first before I come back and talk to you and the way you work in these interdisciplinary teams. So the dumping has been going on principally since the end of the Second World War, but since perhaps a little bit before that, and definitely during the Cold War period. What did your research lead you to find? Because they're not in a stable condition, are they? They're having an enormous effect on, even if they were dumped 50 years ago, they're still having an impact today on our ecosystems.
Yeah, that's true. Like when doing the research and reading much more into it, I came across lots of different studies. So the scientific group, which I mentioned before, like run by Dr. Jacek Beldowski from Polish Marine Station, but then also I met with others like Dr. Matthias Brenner from Alfred Wagner Institute from Bremerhaven, and so on. There is several bigger European corporation projects happening in that region, combining all these different countries which they are around Baltic Sea, and they're trying to understand how to remove and how to navigate with this kind of waste. Because after the Second World War, everything what was left over from the German army was actually packed into the barrels and dropped into that regions. And it's, of course, after 80 years, there is some contamination happening with the environment which is around there, because there is leakage happening and the quantities are present. And there is also lots of research being done on how this kind of quantities of leakage of this master gas, TNT, and different other substances which they are inside of it, are influencing or changing or morphology of the bodies of the creatures which they're living next to, especially when on seabed. And then also, this is kind of like mixing into chemistry of the waters. And I think it's important to say that this is not happening only in Baltic Sea. It's like in all over the world, in all different locations. The problematics is also that till the 70s, there was like lots of chemical munition dumping zones, because this was one way how to get rid of it. But then after 70s, this is like forbidden, but still there is lots of munition being dumped there and ending up there because they have been doing tests or different situations. And in the lives and how we live lately, the wars are very near to us. I like to say that that we all feel much more connected with wars if they're geopolitically closer to us than when they are happening on some continents which they are a bit more further out.
You've actually made me think of something as you were speaking there. Obviously, most of us have families who were in one form or another involved in the Second World War. I certainly have. And there was undoubtedly, and this is not a secret for anyone, there were huge psychological traumas associated with living through those wars and participating in those wars for many, many generations. But we often forget the fact that actually our ecosystems also suffer huge traumatic effects from wars that finished 50 years ago.
The post-World War II practice of sea dumping munitions has left a legacy of environmental and safety concerns. female members. We do a lot of design research,
The
self-initiated.
German army kept Enigma a secret. It represented an important
Ongoing efforts are crucial to address these issues, ensuring the protection of marine ecosystems and human activities in affected regions.
So look, let's talk a little bit more specifically and concretely about some of the art that you've made. There's these two images, one that looks like a photograph of a seabed, and then another one which looks like some kind of digital or sound mapping of what's going on. Am I correct? Is that what we're looking at in those two images?
Yeah, you're correct. In the first image, it's actually recording with drone of two divers diving around inside of the training ground, how to dive around all these different munition. Because during my research, first research started at the of the board Tara. And then the second continuation of research, I actually worked in Kvarner region of Adriatic Sea, and I got special permission by Croatian police forces to go to area which is from diving team of the Lučko anti-terrorist unit. And there they're training young divers how to dive around this kind of munition, and also how to understand the shapes of it. Because, when you're in the water, when you swim around and you find stuff, sometimes you don't understand exactly what you're looking at. So this is the area where they're having this training ground, and it's not like very deep. It's on 2 meters deepness. So it's still possible to see it from above. So that's why we also did this kind of like shots from above when they have been swimming around. It's like a drone in the air.
Yeah.
And I was recording with that. And second one, it's kind of reinterpretation of audio data, So it's visualization of audio data of recordings of this kind of areas, especially at the Baltic Sea,
So you're taking, is it right that you're taking material that was perhaps originally designed for scientific purposes and going through a process of aestheticizing them, making them into aesthetic projects?
Well, I would not say only, I would like to say more to emphasize them also, to bring this scientific knowledge also wider to the audience, to understand it through different perspectives, and also to amplify it, in the way that maybe it's not the most typical way of looking at the specific data, no? Because data gives you information, but this information, we don't know what is happening with it and how to think about it. It's sometimes really hard to grasp the heaviness or what it is bringing, So for me, I'm not, because I think there is always this kind of question: what is the difference between the science communication, which is one branch of how to communicate this complexity of data to the wider public, but then it's also this question: what art research is doing with that, And I think there are two different, quite different ways how to navigate that with that,
Let's come back and talk about the art in a minute, because what struck me as really exciting and really important as well, which you've just been talking about, is the fact that the research aboard Tara led to this symposium, Ocean Around Us, Echoes of the Abyss, Toxic Legacies of the Oceanic Ecologies, in October 2024 in Ljubljana. I think this is really very, very special because it's a multidisciplinary initiative, but it's led by an artist. It was initiated, if I'm not mistaken, by you, Robertina. And this in itself is really worth stopping and talking about in detail. Could you tell us a little bit more about where the idea of the symposium came from? It was your initiative, I believe. What were the response from other scientists and the police and all of these other organizations you worked with when you said, listen, we need to come together to talk about what this material means to us? How did it come about, and how did they respond to you?
Well, it came about because I just didn't want to be the only voice speaking about this problematic, and also not the only voice. There is many voices speaking about that, but I just wanted to bring all these different voices together because there is this idea to build up also a booklet out of this, and or book later on. And for me, it was just important to have these different views being presented at the same table. So the symposium was done like this, that we have been all sitting in the circular formation, also the public, because and this was giving like really nice ground for having different discussions. The invited speakers, they have been really various, from Dr. Matthias Brenner from Institute, Alfred Wagner Institute from Brennerhafen, who is doing research how the leakage of the chemical ammunition per se and all these other ammunitions which they are in the oceans is influencing and changing morphologies of the bodies of marine life. Then it was, as I mentioned before, Dr. Natasha Rogelja, who spoke as an anthropologist of the ocean. We had like the director of the Military History Museum from Pivka from Slovenia, speaking about Enigma and other artifacts which they have inside of their museum. We had like people working on ecological kind of consequences and changes and challenges. I invited also several artists to speak from their position, not only about this topic, but in general on the topic of ocean pollution and just like how to grasp these differences. So the speakers, they can be really various, And then I also invited specific organizations which they're working on this, like TB21, Ur Institute, OASA, and many more, just to have like various of voices. And we agreed with everybody from the symposium that I'm able to use the voices which I recorded during the symposium, the conversations, instead of my video essays. So if you listen to the video essay, you can hear these murmurs which they're overlapping each other, and there's always then one narrator who speaks over them further on.
The post-World War II practice of sea-dumping munitions has left a legacy of environmental and safety concerns.
Female members, we do a lot of design research, self-initiated.
The German army kept the Enigma a secret. It represented an important...
Ongoing efforts are crucial to address these issues, ensuring the protection of marine ecosystems and human activities in affected regions.
And yet they are very much empty. The sea, as Jack Fallon observed, hardly
Local
deserves
stories
to be
weave
called
into
a
the global
place.
thread.
But if one
Ghosts
chooses
of
to see the
neglect
intangible faces of the sea, the navigation becomes...
And with this kind of multiplied sonic representation, I wanted to present how multi-layered the problematic is.
Yeah. The fact that you managed to get together social scientists, anthropologists, artists, specialists in state security, sea security around the same table is nevertheless something that's remarkable, Robertina. And I think we ought to recognize the fact that an artist was leading this and bringing this group of disparate people who I doubt very much have ever met together around a round table before to discuss things that they all have in common. We all have deep knowledge and interest and commitment to these subjects. But the fact that it only becomes revealed in its richness when we sit together and learn to listen to the differences of our opinions, the different languages that we have to use, is a remarkable feat. And I would go another step in this conversation as well and say it's more than likely only to have been an artist with the sensitivity that you bring to your work that could have made that possible. It's unlikely that a policeman would have ever have brought together a multidisciplinary group, including artists, to talk about this subject. So congratulations on behalf of all of us. I think it's a fantastically important piece of work you're involved in. Let's talk a little bit more about the art that came out of it from your perspective. Tell us about it, because you've been working on sonic representations, you've been talking about interpretation of data, but you've also been working in weaving and carpet making, if that's the right word. How do you describe the work that you've been producing there?
The carpet making was kind of like I wanted to bring softness to the hard topic. And the carpet is actually cartography of the sea, of the area which I was recording in Croatia at this Kvarner area. And then, of course, it gets into abstraction. And, you can, like, the audience is invited to sit on the carpet and then put on the headphones, because the audio is very overstimulating, I would say. And just like watch also the visual and just like dive into the video essays, which they are in different parts all around the carpet. So I was trying to bring together these two forces, I would say, and collaboration with the company which is building this carpet from Croatia, the Galleria company, was like great also because they work a lot with artists. So they insisted that I'm with them during the process of making, which was making it great either for me and for them, because, I could really quickly develop the visual aesthetics that I was aiming for, and then also with construction from stainless steel, which is part of that also, and makes it the thing was also important for me to have, to bring this kind of infrastructures, how ocean is the industrial area, and bring all this together, no? So the artwork first, visually, when you come, it has one thing, and then when you put the headphones in, the symposium is still with us, but not in the way that you can listen really carefully to it, but it's more like multiplicity of the voices.
Because you've talked about softness and you've talked about the steel structures. So there's a lovely dichotomy between those two. Tell me about the audiences. How many people can experience the work in any one time? And have you found that different kinds of audiences react in different ways to the piece?
Well, the audience, I have to say that, work was till now presented only in European context. So I can speak also about the European audience for now. But audience is very engaged with it, I have to say. Like, people do have lots of questions. There's lots of follow-ups happening, especially with the ones which they are taking time and they're sitting down and they're putting the headphones on and so on, because it's developed like this, that you can have just like experience of the visual representation of it. But if you have more time, because, in the galleries, especially when it's part of the group exhibition, it's always a bit different. But then you can also dive into the sound for longer time, because there have been two variations of the work presented. One was also last year presented at UN conference, during the UN conference in Nice. The public in general is aware of, I think, what is geopolitically happening all around us.
In my opinion, your work is doing exactly that. It's opening out lots of questions, and it's generating a really generous space in which people can respond in their own way. And that's not just done in the final piece of work, but in the way you actually create it in the multidisciplinary teams. You're not trying to own the truth. You're trying to say, we can only ever get to understanding what's at stake by acknowledging the knottiness of these problems, and everyone has an element of the truth or element of facts that can help us make sense of what's going on. That's one way of, I think, I would like to describe your work. But I would go another step, and perhaps this is a political statement as well, because I think that resistance to these war crimes and echo crimes that are happening around us comes in many, many forms. They come from acts of knowing and sharing that knowing. And it also, resistance involves at times one's own body, putting yourself in situation of risk. And it seems in a way that your work actually crosses both those boundaries. You're not necessarily fighting at the front line with soldiers or against an enemy or with weapons going off around you, but you're actually placing yourself at significant risk in terms of the places you place yourself in order to record that material. So from my perspective, at least, I'd be really interested to hear your response. Your work seems to be working within a frame of resistance and political resistance on many different layers.
I don't perceive it like that.
Mm.
Because, for me, it was just like important to bring this topic out there and speak about it and address it. I like to say I don't perceive myself as somebody who will be like activist or something. I support activist groups and I follow many of them. Like, for instance, in Slovenia, we have this amazing group of young activists which they're running My Voice, My Choice campaign all around Europe, and they managed to persuade European Parliament to take some steps regarding, okay, it's another topic, but I see myself more as a conversation starter, or, like somebody who likes to bring people together, so I'd like to say it more like that, and just like to help all of us to reflect the complexity of life,
Yeah.
Also these other ways, definitely. And it's always good to hear how others perceive us because, what we put into the world is not always the same as we are perceived.
Absolutely. Your work continued during the Made-in platform in Ikvana region of the Adriatic Sea, and your focus changes from the Baltic to the Adriatic. So it's from the north of Europe, Baltic coast, to the south of Europe. What changed? Obviously, some things stay the same, the fact that munitions are everywhere, but were there political changes or socio changes in the way those within whom you interacted responded to you?
Well,
to
I would
your
say like
invitations?
this. There have been different ways how the ammunition ended up in these different oceans, I would say, in these two different specific localities. Like in Baltic Sea was mostly after the Second World War, big dumping of leftovers of the munition and stuff from the German army. And in Adriatic Sea, because, during the Second World War, when the big invasion from Normandy came in, the forces before that happened, they have been kind of giving wrong information to the Germans. So they have been thinking that there will be big invasion coming up actually at the Adriatic. So that's why we have lots of sea mines, like these huge mines, which they are like still waiting for the boats to cross them. And many of them unexploded. So that's one of the problematics which is happening. From the recent war, from the ex-Yugoslavia / this territorial war which was happening in the 90s, there was not so much happening inside of the waters, I would say, but there have been still again leftovers of the bombs which they have been dropped after the bombing of Belgrade was happening, for instance.
By NATO?
When the thing is that, this is still happening because the chemical munition dumping is forbidden, but other munition dumping is not. So when the planes are bombing whichever location and they're not using all the bombs, they still have to release them before they go to landing. So then the big lakes or deep lakes of in Italy or Adriatic, the areas which they're a bit more deeper, they are still used as a dumping zones for this kind of situation.
Which, like international avant-garde activities, essentially multilingual and
Mr. Jacob. 1. Socialist Republics, USSR, inherited chemical.
That sounds like the perfect place where we should finish this conversation this morning, on the fact that the work continues, both positively and in terms of the creativity that you clearly bring to it, but also to the terrible sadness that our world seems absolutely wedded, or our politicians at least seem absolutely wedded to the continuation of war and such barbarities. And it means that the research has to continue, and ways of addressing these subjects has to also remain at the front of our minds, both as artists and as artists leading, in your case, multidisciplinary groups of other specialists. Thank you so much for your time and for talking to us today on Clickbait Citizen War Frames.
Thank you for having me.